Our nation's top officials are having a ball this week in the group chat. From the use of 2012 horrendous frat boy adjacent emojis to a major breach of national security, this administration has never met accountability. But what else happened this week? From measles to reproductive care, so many other stories got buried under the infamous Signal headline. We're going to talk about a few. I am Maggie Gelson Burnett.
And I'm Mallory Hagan. This is Pretty Furious.
The group chat.
The group chat went public, which is like, first of all, every friend group's nightmare.
It really is. It really is. I would never want our group chat going public.
Yeah, there are many group chats I'm a part of that, first of all, I learned a lesson, many people may know this, through the Miss America organization, that you got to be real careful about what you put in writing. So I am always careful about what I put in writing. Lots of voice memos instead. But yeah, this week, the people whose group chat went public, they are people who are in charge of our national security. So they should have known better. They do know better.
In theory.
So this was very much an attempt for them to not be held accountable for their communications using Signal. Like, come on, this was so silly. I'm at a loss for the fact that our national security advisors and leaders were using an app to communicate things that could absolutely put our military and other people abroad in harm's way. Wild.
100%. Yeah. I also think first of all, the emoji use can't, like, with the
I was so embarrassed.
Punching American flag in the fire. I was like, absolutely not. We've gone too far. We've gone too far. And then, like, for me, this all is just a sort of a test of what we are willing to withstand, right? Like, as Americans, what are we willing to put up with? And the bar is in hell, let's be clear, for the expectations we have of our government. But I'm just wondering, what are we gonna do about this? What are the repercussions gonna be? Because there have to be some question mark. Like, so that is where I'm at, is how are we still allowing things like this to happen? How is this just like the norm in America now?
I absolutely do think that this is a true fork in the road in America. And I know we've had a lot over the last decade, but this is literal information that could harm people in our military. It could have harmed the attack that was set to take place. You've got a journalist in a text thread when a text thread should have never happened in the first place. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this could have gone wrong. And the fact that it didn't, we were really lucky. They were really lucky. But what happens next time? You know, there's that old saying, like, loose lips sink ships, and that's because it's about the military. Like, there is a reason that we have a multi-billion-dollar complex in place to maintain our national security, to maintain classified information. When Donald Trump had classified documents in his gold-laden toilet in Mar-a-Lago, that should have been a line in the sand, but this is super serious, and people in much lower positions in our government, be it military or civilian work, lose their jobs for a whole lot less. So
absolutely.
At minimum, Hegseth and Waltz should lose their positions. At best, everybody who was involved in that thread should be gone. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be held accountable, but that's what should happen for sure.
Right. But her emails.
Well, and that's the other thing. It's like, I don't ever want to hear. So I was reading Facebook comments about this because apparently
you're an emotional cutter.
I think I'm starting to turn into a boomer. Like, I genuinely get on Facebook for the entertainment of it all, because I want to see what dumb people in the comments are saying about matters like this. And the amount of people who are like mad at the journalist or blaming the journalist. I'm like, no. He didn't ask to be put there. And he wishes he didn't have to report this to the American people.
Right.
Trust me. But I don't ever want to hear the Republican Party ever again say that they care about our military, that they care about our veterans, that they are the party of law and order. Like, get the actual fuck out of here with that. If this is not a line in the sand for you, the people who should be keeping our nation's military safe, doing that. If this isn't a line in the sand for you, then there is not one.
then nothing is off the table. We're going to get into that and some more lovely, lovely topics today. But first, we want to be sure that you are following us on all of our social media platforms. We are everywhere except for Facebook, basically, at Pretty Furious Pod. You can find us at prettyfuriouspod.com. We're going to get into it here in a minute, but you can't be pretty furious without being pretty first. Mallory, what's your product this week?
Well, first of all, I would like some credit, Maggie, because I realized that every single clip of us, I'm wearing black or like tan, something that's neutral, because that's the world that I live in personally. And today I was like, you know what? Let's shake things up a little bit. So you're welcome for a color. My husband was folding laundry last night and he was like, 90% of your clothing is black. And I was like, exactly, as it should be. Perfect. But anyway, so my product today is something new that I've been trying, and so far I really like it. Shout out to Hannah at Sephora at Bridge Street in Huntsville. She put me on to Danessa Myrick's Beauty Yummy Skin Glow Serum, not serum, serum. She put me on to this face serum, and essentially the reason she put me onto it is my skin is changing. Also, the weather is changing, and I was noticing that my makeup like was sitting on my skin and not actually like absorbing into it. And I, of course, use moisturizer and I prep my skin and all the things. So she recommended this as a nice option for a serum to allow my makeup to really absorb, and it's got some shimmer to it. So I've done it both with foundation on top, and I've also mixed it in with a CC cream. So it's like a light, both options feel really nice on my skin right now, and they're kind of giving me a little bit more glow because I'm not glowing right now. So that's my product this week. I'm liking it so far. Thanks, Hannah.
Love it. Yeah, we're all
about
coming
you?
out of our winter troll phase. So mine is also a new product that I've been trying, but that I have also been really liking. And I've been hearing loads about this brand all over. This is Merit. And this is I don't really know what this is called. This is the Minimalist Perfecting Complexion Stick. And basically it's just like a little kind of foundation stick, for lack of a better term, but it can kind of double as a concealer foundation situation. I really like it. It's super light on the skin. This Merit brand is all like vegan makeup. It's all cruelty free. And yeah, I've just been really liking it. It gives you just like a little bit of coverage. It's not like so aggressive that, so any no makeup days, that type of thing. I don't really wear foundation a ton anymore. So I'll just use like either something like this or a concealer just to like cover up blemishes and stuff. But yeah, like I use this today just to like kind of cover up some redness I have, and then I go over it with some concealer. So yeah, it's really nice. It sort of is like, yeah, it's a hybrid, I would say, concealer foundation.
Are you telling me that you don't have foundation on your face right now?
I don't.
Your skin looks so good.
Thank you so much. It is literally just aside from my 1,000-step skincare routine, the Dior concealer, not to bring in another product, but the Dior concealer is ungodly good. Like it's an impressive product.
I saw an influencer say she stopped spending a lot of money on creams, serums, and stuff, and began just getting hydrofacials every 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm trading out my nails. I took my nails off for the first time in 5 years. I feel so naked, but I'm trading out my nails and using that money towards hydrofacials. And I just did one, so I'm hoping that, 2 or 3 down the line, I'll be like, yes, no makeup. I have rosacea and my skin's really splotchy, and I don't like that. I want to look like you. I want to have your beautiful clear skin.
You have lovely skin, but I will be very curious to know how your hydrofacial journey goes because I'm very interested in those.
Me too. I'm really not into the 900-step skincare routine, so I look forward to sharing.
It's aggressive, yeah.
It's aggressive.
For sure.
All right, well, products aside, this week we mentioned that so many other stories got buried because of SignalGate. Many of them are important, but we do have some headlines that made both of us pretty furious. You want to get started, Maggie? What made you pretty furious this week?
Okay, so my headline comes from Forbes, and the headline reads, "The benzodiazepine problem no one's talking about, mainly for women." This article basically just highlights how women are disproportionately medicated with benzodiazepines versus men. They're medicated at a rate that is almost 2 times what men are medicated benzos. And what I did love about this article, shout out to Forbes for this, I did love that they mentioned all of the factors that play into why women are being prescribed benzos more than men, which is lack of childcare, the basically total lack of paid maternity leave, factors in the home, mental load, things like that. So I do really love that they mentioned that in this article, but that made me pretty furious. As somebody who has been prescribed a benzodiazepine in my life, I know full well how this process goes. You go in, you tell them what's going on, and it's a very blanket solution. And they can be life-changing and probably life-saving for a lot of people in a variety of instances. I know when I was prescribed a benzo, it was incredibly useful at the time. I was having chronic panic attacks, so that was amazing. It helped me to live my life. But it also is an instance where we are seeing women's healthcare sort of, just being pushed to the wayside, and they're being shuffled through doctors' offices and being given this blanket solution. So yeah, not great.
Can you maybe elaborate for people what a benzo is? What does it do?
Yes. Yeah. So benzodiazepine is essentially like a quote tranquilizer. So like Xanax, Klonopin, Ativan, lorazepam, if you're watching White Lotus. And so
Piper, no.
I saw a meme that was like, there's half of the population who knows what lorazepam is and the other half who doesn't. Yep. And yeah. And so, yes, it's basically a form of medication that's highly addictive, and you can build a tolerance very quickly to it. And so when women are prescribed this at disproportionate rates, they find that they become addicted to it. They become addicted more than their male counterparts, and then they need a higher dose, and then they're taking it more, and it's just a vicious cycle. So really nothing, again, is getting fixed because we refuse to address the systemic issues in America that are affecting women.
I also have seen, so in the years that I have mentored and coached young women participating in Miss America, from sorority interviews to college interviews. I mean, women I worked with, we really talk through some topics about life. And in that mentorship, one thing I've learned is that so many college-aged young women are on medication. And when I press a little bit about how that came to be, it is often, as you mentioned, that they walk into a doctor's office, express sadness or symptoms of depression, whatever it might be. They're given this sort of blanket solution. And I often ask, were you instructed to exercise 5 days a week and journal how you felt after you did that? I mean, anything to try and find... Yeah, I was going to say therapy, exercise, changing some of your dietary habits. There are a lot of ways to reduce some of these symptoms or even reduce some of the feelings of depression or anxiety through natural sources. And that's not always the case. I'm not saying that medication is never the answer by any stretch, but I do think that there are a whole lot of missed avenues when it comes to diagnosing and medicating women in particular. So yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize that statistically it was so much higher for women.
Yeah, almost double. So it's wild. And yeah, to your point, it just showcases how, again, little we care about the female experience in our country. So, and in our world, more broadly speaking. Okay, Mallory, what headline made you pretty furious this week?
Well, I do think I've seen quite a few people posting about this, but still it seems to have been hidden, buried. And that is that a Georgia woman was arrested for how she disposed of a miscarriage. She is 24 years old. And I first learned about this through Jessica Valenti. I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. If you're not following Jessica Valenti, you absolutely should be. She writes solely about reproductive care. She keeps you up to date on what's happening state by state. But essentially, police arrested this young woman after she was found unconscious and bleeding near her apartment complex. And they charged her with, quote, concealing the death of another person and, quote, abandonment of a dead body, because after she miscarried, they say she bagged up the fetal remains and put them in the trash. So I'm not sure what she was supposed to do. Can
Correct.
You think of what you were supposed to do when you have a miscarriage?
Well, I was messaging with somebody on Instagram about this, and they said, if anything, you could charge her with akin to like failure to dispose of medical waste or something like that. And let's be clear, I'm not in favor of that either, because I think that this was already traumatic enough. We don't need law enforcement to be involved in a woman miscarrying, but fine. But I do think if you are going to charge with something, that probably would have been far more appropriate. This entire case is just kind of living rent-free in my brain right now, and it's so disturbing how we are in this position of, this is obviously not something she initiated. This is not something that she wanted. It's not something that any woman wants. No woman wants to miscarry. No woman does it intentionally. So
I think the important thing to note here too, as you mentioned, the police actually did say this was a miscarriage. So they're not claiming that like she tried to have an illegal abortion, and Georgia law technically doesn't prosecute people who have abortions. So this is super wild. And I think it's just another indication of how we treat women in America. And it just follows a pattern. We've seen this over and over again. You know, woman of color is criminalized for pregnancy loss, and then now she's charged under some vague law that has nothing to do with abortion. And the media frames her crisis as a criminal act. It's wild. Well, we'll probably talk a little bit about this with Amanda. Should we bring her in?
Amanda grew up in Iowa and then moved to Texas when she was in high school. She has been a travel nurse for the last 5 years and has been living in California since the pandemic. She is very happily child-free by choice and loves to use her platform to talk about it. She also loves to use her platform to connect with other nurses in a real way by not glorifying the work that they do. And she uses humor and education to share her experiences of being a nurse. She currently resides in the Bay Area with her husband, Tim, who is also a travel nurse, and their dogs, who I deeply love, Socks and Pickles. We are so excited to have you here on Pretty Furious. You brought a headline with you that made you pretty furious this week. Can you read your headline for us?
It's a headline about the measles outbreak in Texas. I think there's been like 300 something kids that have been affected. And now, instead of talking about vaccines like we should be talking about, they're using vitamin A to treat it. And kids are now coming in overdosed on vitamin A with cirrhosis and liver damage. So yeah,
perfect.
That makes me pretty furious.
Pretty
amazing. We love it.
As a healthcare worker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the whole premise of RFK's quote unquote plan of like how he wants to tackle healthcare in America is let alone is something to be pissed off about and very angry at. But when you factor in that this is a disease that has been eradicated and now we are dealing with the repercussions of someone else's pure stupidity, it's like, it's just the most frustrating thing ever to think about, that like this, we are in this position because other people refuse to believe in science. And that is diabolical. Like,
well, I think what's scary too is like the CDC is now being compromised. I guess they added like a little caveat in the CDC now that vitamin A is like, what did they say? It's like, it's therapeutic, or it does help with measles. It still talks about immunization, but why are we adding that? Can we even trust what the CDC says now because of this administration? I mean, they took out all of those words like women, diversity, all this shit too. So I don't know. It's so frustrating to watch as a nurse.
What I find very interesting about this entire movement and MAHA and like just anti-vaccination, all of it. The only reason that we know that dyes, pesticides, all of the things that we have so far allowed in our foods and medication, whatever it might be, that people are railing against, the only reason we know that those things are bad is because of science, is because of scientific studies. And I think we've said this before, but I just want to reiterate, no one is disagreeing that we need better regulation. We need the removal of those dyes, that we need to be more careful about pesticides and the things that we allow in our food. But the reason that we know that is because we trust scientists. So in that same breath, to say that you don't trust vaccines or immunizations is just so crazy to me.
I know.
Like, I trust scientists to tell me that these dyes are bad, but I don't trust scientists and doctors to tell me that my kids need vaccinations.
Yes.
right. We're picking and choosing, and
Yeah.
you can't cherry pick the science. Like, that makes no sense.
No.
So Amanda, that's a great segue, I think, Mallory, into this question. Amanda and I both grew up in an area that is now what I will call kind of a hotspot for anti-vaxxers, health misinformation. And I'm curious to know, Amanda, from your standpoint, how working in healthcare has really shaped your worldview of the interconnectedness of the US healthcare system in regards to our political climate.
I mean, it's just weird that all of this anti-vax stuff used to be like a very crunchy California thing, and now it's kind of seeped into MAGA and all of these Republican influencer moms and all of this stuff. It's weird to see in healthcare that there are also other healthcare workers that think like this. I've worked with some. It's giving me PTSD from working in COVID. I worked on this assignment in Bakersfield, and this also is a very rural thing. I don't think this type of mentality happens as much in the cities where more educated people are. They definitely prey on a certain group of people. But I was on this assignment and this whole ICU was filled. I'm adult ICU, by the way. I'm an adult ICU nurse. This was during the Delta wave of COVID that was killing whole families. It was decimating communities. And I was in a very rural part of California that has a huge Hispanic population. And there was a nurse, I was taking my lunch break, and she was like, yeah, so I had COVID last week, and my son in Florida sent me some ivermectin, and it just went away in like 2 days. Ivermectin.
Oh my God.
I just had to like put my earbuds in like immediately. This is an ICU nurse taking care of, like, there are patients dying every single day on this unit. And she was anti-science and anti what we were doing to help these patients. Like, we're not giving ivermectin in the ICU. Why are you taking that? It's wild.
Do you know if she was a Trump supporter? I'm just curious.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what do you mean, Maggie?
Yes.
I wanted to clarify.
Yeah. And I think like what's crazy is like these people are so unwilling to roll back maybe some things they've thought are true or to ever say I've been duped. They fucking dig their boots into the mud even further. It's crazy. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And it's in the age of information. This might be the worst thing to ever happen to us, actually, that we don't trust experts anymore. We don't trust science. We trust this Maha bitch on Instagram to tell us what supplements to take for measles. I don't understand how people think. Doctors go through years and years of training. They have to be in research. They have to know the latest research. They're not doing this for fun. They're not doing this because they're getting paid by big pharma.
Right.
It's crazy. And they all want to say these doctors are getting paid to put COVID on a death certificate, that whole thing that was going around during COVID so that they could get paid more. And it's like, but your favorite politicians, you need to go look who they're getting paid by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But they
exactly.
They never do that research. What are you talking about?
You know, I started watching Chelsea Handler's new Netflix special that came out. And she opens up the special by saying, like, hey guys, remember monkeypox? And everyone's kind of silent. She's like, exactly. Because the fucking gays went and got vaccinated. She was like, they did it because they're thinking about the community and they went and got vaccinated so your heterosexual ass didn't have to deal with it. And I was like, that is so true.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Believe the science, listen to doctors. Collectively, within like a 30-day span, everyone went out and got vaccinated. And because they did that, none of us had to deal with monkeypox. I was like, wow, imagine if everyone had that much sense and that much of a communal mindset. Where could we be?
I think that's another thing. That's a good point about community. We just do not have that here. Like, again, thinking back to COVID, all of the lockdowns in other countries, South Korea got that shit under control so quickly because everybody did what they're supposed to do. The public health experts were saying, do this, do this, do this. And they said, yes, okay, let's do this so we can get back to normal life and nobody dies. Why don't we do that here? It's so frustrating.
You mentioned South Korea, but you travel extensively. You've got a trip coming up that's a group trip you just launched. How do you see the mindset of Americans differing from those of other folks globally?
What's it called? American exceptionalism. I think that is so prevalent still today. I think a lot of us are trying to undo a lot of that propaganda that we've been told our whole lives, that we're the best. This is the best country you could ever live in. Look at all the amazing things we have. The American dream, all of these things. And I'm glad I think it's millennials. I really do. I think it's millennials that is the main group that's undoing a lot of this conditioning. And I hope more people see the more we talk about politics, truly everything is political. The reason, I mean, I talk about it with nursing, the reason in the South or in the Midwest you're getting a 30-minute break for a 12-hour shift, that's political. The reason you're not getting paid more, that's political. The reason we have 0 weeks of federally mandated maternity leave, that is political. Other countries have it better. We're not the best. We're not. And if you travel, you'll see that.
One of the things that I find really interesting is that a lot of the countries who measure higher on happiness, who have better education standards, who have better healthcare standards, they are countries that are actually not very religious, or they don't have a centralized religion. And that's a whole different conversation. But I do think there's so much to be said for when you see the world and you experience other cultures, you begin to realize, first of all, that other people do not view Americans in a positive light.
Yes.
I learned that the hard way my first time in Paris. They were like, yeah, no. And I was like, wait, what? I was like 24. But I do think it's really fascinating that there is the mindset here that we are the best, that we've got the best of everything. And we really don't. And I think that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, especially a lot of the older generations. It's hard to admit that you've been duped, as you said, or that perhaps you fell prey to propaganda. And we've talked a lot on Pretty Furious about how so much of this is very much on purpose, very much by design. And this is just one more thing, right?
Yeah, right. Amanda, one of the ways that you are, I mean, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think in terms of what you've said on social media and everything, one of the ways that you are able to travel and be travel nurses and be in the industry that you're in is because you are child free. And that's one of the reasons that like you have that flexibility.
Amanda, what is a dink?
It's a dual income, no kids couple.
So I'm curious to know kind of how you even decided to be child free in a country that is obsessed with women
And our
giving us
bodies.
babies. Yeah,
Yeah.
and our bodies. Where did that journey begin for you? And I know you said relatively recently that that was a recent decision that you finally made. So I would be curious to know how you made that decision in the first place.
Honestly, if I think back to childhood, I think I always knew that I wanted to be child free. I remember growing up in Eldridge, Iowa, and thinking, I don't belong here. I do not belong in this town. I don't belong. I don't want to marry somebody from my high school. I don't want to live here. I want to spread my wings and fly, go see other places. I always wanted to travel. It's very strange as a woman growing up because a lot of the messaging when you're a teenager is don't get pregnant. Do not get pregnant. If you do, I'm going to disown you. Like that's the messaging I got from my family. And then
Absolutely.
the second you turn, yeah, which is scary. I'm like, oh my God, so it's really horrible. to
Wait.
be
Well, it's a
pregnant and have child.
survival thing.
Can we also talk about, though, that it's actually not that easy to get pregnant, and you don't even
Right.
realize that until you're grown up trying to get pregnant, and you're like, what the
Right.
fuck, man? All I ever heard was, don't get pregnant. And I'm like, you can only get pregnant like 3 days out of the whole month.
I just remember that. I remember that being the messaging, like, do not get pregnant. I mean, my parents literally said they would make me move out of the house. I would have to take care of myself. They would not help me. Like, it was scary. So I had that all of my teenage years. And then by the time I got into my mid 20s, I was like dating someone pretty seriously, and they were asking when I'm having kids, and the pressure started. And I hadn't even become a nurse yet. I didn't have anything financially like stable in my life. I just had a man. So they were already pushing me to have kids. And this continued all the way into my 30s. It was incessant. And then Tim and I got together, and we hadn't even been engaged yet, didn't even get married yet. His mom was pressuring us to, you guys can just have a baby before you get married. A lot of people do it. It's fine.
Isn't
No.
that crazy how that table turned?
So wild.
Yeah.
Like if
it
you
was
had
so
if you had
weird.
gotten pregnant in your early 20s, even if you were dating someone but you weren't married yet, the narrative around that would have felt
Right.
very different.
Right. It was just like I turned an age, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted a baby coming out of my uterus. I'm like, I'm still a child. I'm still a 25-year-old teenager. I can't do that.
Literally.
I can't take care of myself. Like, what? So the pressure really gave me the ick. I got a lot of pressure from friends too. I had a lot of friends that were having kids a little bit younger, and I got a lot of that same messaging. Amanda, you're going to regret it if you don't have kids. And I think I was one of the first in my friend group to really start questioning it. I just never felt ready. I kept thinking there's going to be a time later that I'm just ready and I'll want to do it. There's going to be a time later on. And then later on came in my 30s, and I just still never wanted it. But I felt this weird shame and guilt with that decision. And Tim and I really didn't talk about it a lot before getting married, which is kind of crazy. I think both of us assumed we would have kids because that's the assumption for every couple, I feel like. And then it took us travel nursing and getting out of the South and the Midwest by ourselves to really talk about it and be like, actually, this is not something we want to do. We really like our lives the way it is, the way the world is going. I mean, to me, it feels unethical to bring a child here. I don't know. I'm starting to go down a path that I'm a little bit anti-natalist. I know that's not the truth for everybody, but for me,
Better than being pro-natalist.
It is. I'm just like, I can't. And not in this country. Maybe I would feel differently if I lived in a country that gave a shit about women, but we don't, and that's not the reality here. And I would feel horrible if I had a daughter. Like, she's going to have less rights than me. It makes me sick, to be honest.
I think what you said about growing up with the pressure and wanting to get out and realizing that very young, I relate to that so much. I grew up in Central Alabama. And I remember, so I went to Auburn University for a year, and I looked around at my peers, young women who were like, if I'm not engaged by the time we graduate, I won't get to have a candlelight, which is what happens in your sorority when you get engaged. And I remember I was like, the fuck?
It's like a game, yeah.
I was like, no. And in my freshman year, I was like, gotta go, get me out of here. Because you just watch it. You watch the MRS degree happen. You watch young women essentially give up any desire to have a real career, progress in their career, because the concern is getting married and starting their family at a young age without anyone ever really discussing that. At that age, your frontal lobe is not developed. You have no idea who you are, and you don't know what you want out of life. And if you're a very small percentage of person who actually does, like, kudos, good for you. But the majority of young people have a lot of growing and a lot of learning to do before bringing another human onto this planet. And I think there's just so many people who refuse to recognize that. And I also think it gives me a lot of, my mom had me at 18. I was very much a surprise. And I have a lot of empathy for people who became parents young, whether by accident, which is my case, or because of societal pressure. I have a lot of empathy for them, but I'm also at this place where I'm like, but now we know better. So let's make choices based on the knowledge that we have at hand. And I think it's really admirable, the people like you, Amanda, who say, you know, I took the time to think about this. And I think for me, it is best to not have children. And when people really combat that, I'm like, why do you care? Why do you care if someone else has decided that they don't want kids? I think that's really bizarre.
You should see some of the comments we get.
I was just going to bring that up. So much of what you share on your Instagram is comments that you get on your videos about being child free. And I'm so curious to know how you deal with that kind of hate and backlash online. And maybe even generally speaking too, when you're speaking about politics and nursing and healthcare, which are very political topics, you know, how you kind of process these random people on the internet being like, you're a piece of shit for not having children.
I think if we had started this account maybe 3 or 4 years ago, those comments would really get to me because I was still in the process of like, am I firm in this decision? Because this is a huge decision. I can't really go back on it. Like once I get a certain age, like I don't know. I was really flipping like back and forth on, do I want kids or don't I? It's just such a huge decision. So I think if it were me 4 years ago, that shit really would have gotten to me. But now there's not anything somebody could say to me to be like, well, maybe I should have kids. Oh my God, maybe I am a piece of shit because I don't want kids. Like honestly, it makes me stronger. It makes me like, it fuels me. I love that I get underneath these people's skin because it's more telling about them than it is about me.
Right.
I'm sorry you regret it. You hate seeing a random woman online that's like, thank God I didn't have kids.
Yeah. It definitely
always men. It's always men.
It definitely is like a hit dog will holler.
Yeah.
You're invoking something in them that like they're not willing to admit that they wish they hadn't, or they wish they had taken more time to think about it, or perhaps chosen a different partner, or whatever it might be. That I think you're exactly right about. It says more about the person commenting and quote unquote hating on you. Man, I saw a clip of Benny Blanco. Are you guys being inundated with Selena and Benny content right now on your feeds?
I'm getting a lot of like the Haley and Justin
Right?
drama
There's
stuff.
it's so much, but I'm getting all
I'm
these.
like, aren't we done talking about this? Like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
I will fully admit I did just listen to their new
The seven
album
part. Oh,
this morning, and it is quite good. It's a very good album.
So I'm getting fed all of these interviews of Benny where he's like so emotionally mature. Everyone's like, "Hell yeah, Selena. Good job." But one thing that he brought up was that, you know, she goes off and on of the being on the internet and absorbing comments and all that kind of stuff. And he said something. He was like, "Hating is free. People who hate, it's free." And he was like, "You know what is not free? Your time. Sitting around reading comments from people who are hating." He was like, "You got better things to do. You can hang out with your friends. You can hang out with your husband." And I was like, you know what? That's so true. I do like to read comments for entertainment.
yeah.
But anyone hating, he made me think about it. I was like, you know what? He's right. He was like, I could
We
be
were
making
just
music.
talking about that. We were just talking about how Mallory said that she thinks she's becoming a boomer because she really likes to get on Facebook and just read comments for fun.
Oh my god.
I was like,
Facebook is the worst.
But purely for entertainment. Like, it doesn't get under my skin. What people, I'm like, wow, that person's an idiot. And that's about as much as I give it. But I do find it to be really enjoyable and fascinating to read the things people say. But when it's directed at you, it can be really difficult to let it roll off. But as you said, you know, once you get to a certain age, it's like hard to go back on the decision as to whether or not to have kids. And I might argue that, like, if you wanted to, there's always adoption. There's a lot of options out there. But you know what decision you can't go back on? Having the kid.
Yeah.
And so I think there's so many people who just don't think about it. Who don't really think about whether or not that's something that they want. And one of the things you said, Amanda, was like, I never felt ready. And I know you all have heard this. You've heard someone say, no one's ever ready. You just do it and you figure it out along the way. And I'm like,
if I had $1.
That's
I know,
that's a
seriously.
problem.
It is.
I've heard it a million times because, like you, I'm 36 and I like just now feel like an adult. Like,
me too, girl.
I'm like, we
36
have a
too.
house. What? There's a house around me, and like, I don't
y'all,
know.
I'm not even 30 yet, and I'm like,
God,
Are you
I always
not?
forget that.
I'm an infant. Like, I literally
my
am like,
God,
I don't know
you
what y'all
are.
are doing, but
Yeah.
I will.
And if you don't feel like an adult, Maggie, that's makes sense.
It's normal. Yeah,
Normal.
I didn't
Thank
either.
you. I
And
don't.
yeah, so this idea that at my age, my mother had an 18-year-old.
That's wild. Wild.
That's crazy material.
Wild.
Meanwhile, parenting a 7 and a 9-year-old, I'm a bonus mom, a 7 and a 9-year-old, there are days that I'm like, I have to like really think about. I have to really think about what's coming out of my mouth, what's being demonstrated, and we do, but it's hard. So when people say you're never ready, I'm like, you should try and be ready.
I think there's something too with like boomer parenting. I parented myself a lot. We were kind of left to our own devices, which I know their parents did as well. Thankfully, a lot of us turned out decent because of our resilience and trauma. But I don't know. It's just such a major decision, and I hate how people take it so lightly. I'm like, is it me? Am I the crazy one that's been thinking about this decision for a decade? I don't know.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on, Mallory, you were saying when people go to college and they are just in the pursuit of like getting married, having children, getting married as soon as possible, getting their MRS degree. And I think that really brings us to a super important and honestly an insidious sort of, I guess, pandemic we're facing in our world and in America specifically. Is that people who are young, who are younger millennials, maybe Gen Z even, and I don't want this to come across as like a Gen Z hate reel. I think Gen Z is doing more than most generations have before, and I have a lot of hope for them. But I think a lot of it too comes down to this lack of interest in developing your own sense of self and this lack of true interest in developing thoughts and beliefs and opinions and behaviors and taste. Taste is a huge thing that people develop so much in their 20s, specifically mid 20s to late 20s. And so I think it just kind of goes to show that all of this is so interconnected. It is not a mistake that we have an entire subset of millennials and maybe even Gen Z who are going to college in pursuit of a husband and children, and then coming out on the other end of that being a bunch of Trump supporters. That to me makes perfect sense, that because these people have no interest and they don't think that there is any kind of value in discovering more about themselves, they immediately jump to, how could I put my time and effort and energy and, reliance on another person as sort of like the helm of what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And then that in turn informs their beliefs and opinions and all of that. So it's incredibly, I think, jarring to me, maybe, how interconnected all of these pieces are, of people choosing to be child-free, the people who are definitely not putting any kind of thought whatsoever into having children, and how we are now living in this current political climate. It all makes total sense to me, how we got here.
I was going to add, a big part of patriarchy is where you stand in society. So for men, it's best if you have a wife. It's shown that they get more promotions at work, they make more money over time as opposed to a single man. And then for women, it's totally inverse. The second you become a mother, your stock goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's strange how patriarchy is still talking women into the greatest thing you could ever do is become a mother.
Yeah.
And it's weird too to see, I don't know when this started happening, but the trad wife thing, like, I don't know when that started, but I just remember on my feed, I was getting all of these like trad wives and homesteading shit. I'm like, what is going on? Why are we glorifying this? This is bizarre. Honestly, if it's something you want to do, cool. But it's like, the rug has just been pulled out from under us. I felt like we were making some strides with female empowerment, feminism, all of these things, and then fucking trad wives. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah,
Trad wives.
The boss babe,
Yes.
working woman line to trad wife over the last like decade has been
Bizarre.
really, really wild to watch. But
Yeah.
as we mentioned and we talked about in the past, there are very powerful forces at play that are pushing women back in that direction. Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, who owns what is it, EV magazine, that had Hannah Nealman on the cover. They're pushing this trad wife thing back out into the forefront. I mean, there are a lot of
developing a period tracking app.
There are a lot of very powerful people at play pushing this narrative back in front of women because it benefits the nuclear family, it benefits men, it creates more women who want to have children, therefore creating the workforce. I mean, Maggie and I are doing a deep dive episode on that next week, I think, right?
Good.
Or
good.
some pieces of it.
Yeah, next week is sort of a smorgasbord episode of like Meghan Markle becoming the new progressives trad wife, and like she's the ballerina farm of the left. Sort of a deep dive analysis into that, which involves a lot of background context on like the trad wife movement. So yes, that's coming. Teaser.
It's just so crazy. And I think a little bit of it too is that what we were fed as women about being independent, working for your own money, aspiring to more in your career, leaning in, like all of those things didn't come with the balance of partners actually picking up the slack. It just meant that women got more responsibility, had more on their plate, became more anxious. Maggie and I talked a little bit about women being medicated at higher rates because of anxiety and depression. It's like the pressure cooker just got hotter for women in the workforce, that we're kind of told you can have it all. You can balance everything. You can do it all. And so it makes sense that the trad wife movement comes back in, because now they're like, see, it's really hard to have it all, isn't it? It's really difficult to want to work and have kids and maintain the household. So just don't.
Yeah.
And just choose to be a stay-at-home mom instead.
Yes.
See, that's also feminism, isn't it? Yeah. So it makes sense that the pendulum has swung back in this direction, although it's not a good thing, but it does make sense.
No. We were talking about this the other night, a couple girlfriends and I, just some feminist rants at a bar, which is like one of my favorite things to
Perfect.
do. There's something like, it's fun. It's weird to watch like the generations of women that we came from and the men that they raised. So like our grandparents, they had to rely on men. There was no choice. They had to marry to have money. Like that's your stake in society, is becoming a mother and having as many children as possible. And then they gave birth to our mothers, who then got into careers. They actually could have a job, but they were also expected to do all of the same things that their mothers did at home. So we came from like the ultimate boss babes, fucking stressed out moms. Then they gave birth to us. We watched our moms do all of that shit and we were like,
Yeah, no thanks.
I'm
No
not
fucking
doing
thanks.
that. Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But our brothers or men that came from moms like that saw their moms do all of that while their dads really didn't do shit. And they're like, I'm going to get a woman like that someday. They aspire to find a woman like that. And millennial women were just like, absolutely fucking not. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing that. I remember my mom, like she had a full-on job career. She was an accountant. And she would get up every morning and make my dad's lunch for him to take to work.
Oh
and
my
she
gosh.
would woke us all up to like get
And
showered and everything.
made you breakfast and got you.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And no wonder she's wildly depressed and has anxiety. And there's a whole story about my mom. She's not well. And I don't want to be that. I never have aspired to be that. She never stuck up for herself. I'm just like, I couldn't be further from that.
Yeah, I mean, Amanda, I relate very heavily to what you were saying about your mom. Like, my mom was the breadwinner for a majority of my upbringing, if not all of my upbringing. My mom worked, 40 plus hours a week as a dental hygienist. She retired last year at 50 years of, like, she was like, I'm making it to 50. And that was something I always was taught growing up was an admirable thing to do. And of course it is. There is so much in there that I'm like, she tackled everything. There was not a single thing that my mom was not thinking about involving her 5 kids, her spouse, her job, all of the things. But one thing that strikes me is that when I was probably 11 or 12, my dad left his job in radio after 25 years and started his own voiceover business. And my dad became very successful in a short period of time doing voiceover. And the only way, and I'm sure he would say this, and I'm sure that my mom would probably echo this, is yes, of course, he put in the time and the effort and all of that. And also the only way that men are able to do those things is when they have a spouse who is doing all of the mental load work, who is doing all of the back end stuff. So, and I know that my dad would echo that sentiment, but like, that's what strikes me is there is always somebody in the background thinking about every other person first. And then we look around and we wonder why women are medicated at twice the rate that men are. We wonder why boomer women specifically have all of the mental health issues that they do, because they do. And we wonder why women are working, boomer women specifically, are working until they are 70, 71, 72. That has been the thing that has maybe made them feel like they are worthy of something, which is their work.
Amanda, you're traveling. You've built this platform now that's growing. What is the thing that you see for yourself in the next 5 years or so?
Not to put you on the spot.
I know, no, kind of unknown. Like my husband and I started this page just for fun. We were living in Seattle at the time. I was really depressed when we started it. I needed some type of outlet and a way to be creative. I just never have seen myself as a very creative person. And so I wanted to lean into that. And so it's been really fun, and it's been really good for our relationship too, to do this together and create our own little community. We have a lot of child-free people that follow us, and then a lot of nurses. That's our main content. So I don't know. I'd love to keep doing this, see where it goes. I feel like I have a lot to talk about. We lead a pretty cool lifestyle, in my opinion. I'm sure we'll still be nurses by day. I don't think we're going to quit that anytime soon. We might go into a different specialty or something. But yeah, it's where it's going right now. I don't know that I have any of the huge lofty goals, because everything has kind of surprised me so far. So I don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on myself to get to something. So it's just fun, whatever we're doing right now.
Yeah.
We, at the beginning of this episode, we're talking about the headline that's just recently come out of Georgia There's a young woman who's been arrested. She's behind bars. She miscarried and was found in a pool of her own blood, unconscious. What is your take as a working professional in the medical field, where we're at with reproductive care right now?
Honestly, it just makes me absolutely fucking sick. I don't know if I have enough words for it. I feel so bad for OB-GYNs right now. It's a field that a lot of residents aren't even trying to go into at this point. A lot of them in a lot of states don't even get the proper training because abortion is banned, essentially. I don't know. I just can't. I think all the time, what if I had a patient? They'll end up in the ICU, septic with a retained fetus that's not coming out. And I just can't imagine not being able to do anything, but we really can't. It's just, I don't know. It's a sad state of affairs. I don't know how people really think like this, because I don't think like this at all.
It goes back to the trusting of science.
Yeah.
Trusting doctors, trusting women to make their own decisions.
Yeah. And why are people so obsessed with what someone else is doing with their body?
Having kids, not having kids.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is. And why do we want more kids born into poverty when we have a country that doesn't even help them?
Yeah.
I mean, there's people that are against free school lunch. What the fuck is going on in this country?
Right. I would say that is the largest fault of hang on, let me rephrase. I feel there are plenty faults of the pronatalist movement, let's be clear. But I think that's one of the biggest issues, is that they're so unwilling to address what happens after a child is earthside. They don't give a shit if your kid's getting gunned down in a school. They don't give a shit if you are septic fighting for your life and get arrested for miscarrying. They don't care if your child can't get lunch. They don't care if your child can't get a vaccine. The argument, that we all have been saying towards the pronatalist movement is that y'all don't give a shit what happens to that child once that kid is born. And that is not hyperbole or opinion. That's rooted in fact, because we do not have any social structures that support women or children post-birth and even pre-birth. So I completely understand not having the verbiage to describe the sheer disappointment in our powers that be, the structures that are in place in our country right now for the way that we treat women, especially pregnant women.
I know every time something new happens, I'm just like, I almost can't be surprised anymore.
I'm not surprised.
I don't know why I'm surprised.
Thank you for sharing with us, Amanda, your thoughts on being child-free and our healthcare system and just the state of being an American in the world. We would love to play a little game with you. We call it Fury or Fun. So we've got some things we're going to rattle off to you. We want to know your thoughts. Does it make you furious, or is it something that's fun? Maggie, do you want to start?
Okay, so I'm going to start with Amanda. Do you know who Vani Hari is at The Food Babe?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So thoughts and feelings on her.
Theory.
She sucks.
Who even is she? I didn't realize she kind of copied the name of somebody else too. Food Science
I didn't
Babe.
realize that. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember her? She has really good content.
I love Food Science Babe.
Yeah. So I literally had to look this lady up the other day because I saw that she went to the White House or something.
Yeah.
And I had no idea who she was. Thank God my algorithm didn't ever steer me that way.
Quick little insert here. I used to be on Truvani's PR list, which is her supplement company. And I don't know how they found me I think just online, whatever. And they sent me some stuff. And eventually I emailed them being like, you need to remove me from your PR list because your founder is just spewing misinformation everywhere about food dyes. And she's like, we have to get Kellogg's to get red dye 4 out of the fucking Cheerio, whatever the fuck. And I'm like, I can't stand you. So I had to email them and I was like, please take me off your PR list.
Okay, next one is, how do you feel about packing cubes?
Yeah, you little traveler.
Fun. I mean, I wish I was more.
Are you an expert packer now or no?
No, not really. Girl, I'm neurodivergent.
That's fair.
Everything's a mess. I have mess piles all over my room. I wish I was.
So are you the
better
type
at
that
it.
just throws shit into a suitcase and then
The night
you dip
before,
out?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 For
That's
sure.
me.
Okay, this next one. What do you think about the gallon jug water bottles? The ones that say,
I hate
The ones
it.
that
I
say
hate
like
it.
the time on them, where they're like, "Keep going, girl."
No, I hate it. I hate it so
They
much.
give you like motivational cues.
I hate
on
it.
them.
I see that stuff at work, and I'm like, why did you
I was
bring?
gonna say, I bet nurses all the time
I
have
was
those
gonna-
yeah.
models.
They do, and it's like a certain personality. It really is, and
For sure.
I don't.
She's
think,
also
like,
the gym girly.
Yeah,
Is
but
she
even
also
just
the
like
ivermectin
politically,
girly?
yeah, I'm like for some reason politically too. I think if
Yeah.
I see that, I'm like, are you
It's a
MAGA?
that's
you
an
hiding?
alt-right thing. Yeah.
It is.
Well,
It is.
I think it's more about like signaling. You can also
Yeah.
just drink a gallon of water by refilling a normal fucking size
Right.
water bottle. Listen, I have a lot going on. I'm an extremely busy person, but I can go, okay, I think this is like the fourth time I filled up my water bottle. Got it. All right, probably
Yeah.
2 more is good.
Yeah.
Like I don't
Yeah.
need to carry around a thing the size of my body in order to
hate
remember
it.
how to drink. I don't know. Yeah, that one I cannot. Okay, shoes off on the plane.
No, absolutely not. No.
Oh my God. I had a
So
travel
gross.
nightmare from hell last month. And like, long story short, the woman next to me threw up when we were landing. And we had
Oh,
to come in
yeah.
for
Oh my God, I
landing
saw
twice.
this on
It
the
was
story.
awful. Oh my God, it was terrible. And at the Denver airport, no less, which is like the most sus airport in the continental US. But we had to come in for landing twice. She threw up as we were landing. Her husband next to her, upon taking off, took his shoes off for the entire duration of the flight. And had socks on, thankfully, but still, it's just unacceptable behavior. Like, you just can't be doing that.
Or like bring slippers or something. Like I get it, you don't want to be in your shoes. Like something. You gotta
Sure.
put those dogs in something. Like this is ridiculous.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get your rots out of here.
I
Yeah.
think
It's the same-
I have to admit, for me, it really depends on what's happening. Like international flights, I'm all about, but I always bring a fresh pair of like, so even if I have socks on in my shoes, I bring a pair of fresh socks to put on top of my socks so I can like walk
Yeah.
around and then take those off so that I'm
Yeah.
not like, I don't know. But anything where I'm like, first of all, don't ever put your feet like up on the thing, the hand.
No.
Just, there's a lot that people do that I'm like, what are you doing? You do not live here.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Fury.
It's gross.
It's the same in the hospital. People will walk around those rooms, like patient family members, without shoes on in the room. I'm like,
Absolutely not.
you're gonna get MRSA. You're gonna get something, C. diff. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what, but this is so fucking gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
stand it.
vile behavior. Okay,
Yeah.
last one here. I suspect I know your answer to this. Well, Mallory, maybe I'll let you ask this one.
All right. Last one is dogs being children.
I feel like they are my kids. Is that weird? Is that
I literally said, I was like,
So
pickles
fun.
and socks are her children.
Yeah,
Fun.
no, they really are. I know that's really cringy, but
No, it's not. I also I have a dog. This was so I was like, I don't know her. Does she have dogs? Does she like them? Are they
Yeah.
her kids?
yes. Yeah,
So
they are.
fun.
We take
Fun.
care of them so well.
That's so funny.
I love pickles and socks. I'm a
I
big
know.
fan of
They're
theirs.
So funny.
Amazing. Okay, so last thing, Amanda, at the beginning of the show, we always talk about a product that we can't live without, that we're loving right now. What is your product that you are loving right now?
What do I reach for all the time?
Love it.
I'm a skincare hoe, just like you, Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
I love this brand. I feel like they have such good dupes of really expensive products. It's made by a dermatologist, obsessed, and it's Prequel.
Yeah.
This is their brightening vitamin C serum with L-ascorbic acid, ferulic acid, and ergothioneine. It's a dupe for the SkinCeuticals CE ferulic, which is like $180 or something, and this is like $20. It's just a great vitamin C. Obsessed with it. Great for brightening. Great for just everything.
Love
So,
it.
yeah,
I
that's my
get so
favorite right
many skincare like recommendations and ideas from you, Amanda. That's where I would say Amanda was a big reason why I got so into like Korean skincare this
Yeah.
last year. So
Yeah.
Well, your skin is glowing, so if that's what you're using, sign me up. Love it. Well, thanks, Amanda. We're so happy to have you. We appreciate you.
I know,
Thanks
I
for
know.
joining us.
I know, it was so fun.